that is emerging called the impact investing industry. And it's called the impact investing industry, but it hasn't quite figured out what impact is yet. But there's some good work going on in this field. One of the most interesting things about it for me is that there are private sector actors that are interested in this work. There are venture capitalists, pension funds, there are impact investing funds per se, and this is giving us some insights into the private sector. Those are private sector people who are already predisposed to trying to make a financial, social and financial difference at the same time. But this also, I think, suggests some strategies for you about how to work with the private sector. So let me take you through this, and then I think, as I say, there's a leadership opportunity for you, for the IEU, and for the GCF. I want to talk briefly about the impact investing industry itself. I want to talk also about the differentiation within the private sector, not all the same. I want to talk about what their priorities are, at least in my experience. And then some strategies for engaging. Impact investing is a whole range of products and tools and mechanisms and vehicles for making investments in companies and funds with the intention of creating an economic, a social or environmental impact along with the financial return. And it takes various forms. And this is not a perfect industry. It's an industry really that's only 10 years old, but it has associations, it has conferences, it has all sorts of other publications and reports. And it is involving a range of asset classes. Those that generate below market investment or below market returns and are often done by foundations, high net worth individuals, and those that actually are seeking a for-profit or a market rate of return and are different kinds of investments, equity investments, both in the public markets and also in private deals. A lot of the impact investing work that we've looked at is in the private deal area. This takes a while. So another way to look at this is your slide.
Yeah.
But it was our slide before it was your slide. Impact investments are really trying to be in a quadrant that generate medium to high returns financially, but have high social returns. Traditional investments, and you know a lot about this, the mainstream investment world is not that concerned about social returns, but in fact, there is a lot of possibility for generating impact investment with moderate financial returns, I would say, and high or medium social returns. And that philanthropy part includes what the American foundations do, which is program-related investing. Okay, so this is just another way to look at impact investing as it's developing. There's been some work, quite a bit of work actually, on evaluation in the impact investing space. And some of it is very good, and I recommend it to you. There's been quite a bit of work on sustained work around common industry metrics. Some of you have heard of the IRA system and others. This is hard work to do. This is hard work to get common metrics. Most of those metrics are at the output level, and some are at the organizational outcome level. But there's a lot more work to do around impact per se. There's been good take up of theory of change. There's been some alignment between what investors do, where they have an investment thesis, and theory of change coming across from the evaluation world. And that's been a really interesting conversation between evaluators and investors. There have been some innovations. Acumen has done good work on lean data. There's been some other innovations around integrating impact management into the systems of the investors. And by that, usually is meant outputs and stories. But it's not that difficult to move from there to something more meaningful around impact studies in the way that we've been talking about here. Too many outputs and stories still. Too few rigorous evaluations in this space that include control groups, counterfactuals. There's some exceptions to that with development impact bonds, with some other examples, but for the most part there needs to be more of that work. There's also in this industry, which is shaped by the marketing capacities of the financial sector, an unwillingness to be self-critical. I know you would, at least. An unwillingness or an inability in some cases to look at negative unintended consequences. But this is an industry that has real life. We have had, the scandal in the United States with wealthy people, in a sense, bribing colleges to get their kids into universities. We heard about that. So there was a high-profile impact investor caught up in that as well. And so the sector is vibrating because of that, and that's real life. Good that they were caught. But that's an important thing that needs to be addressed. The other thing that is happening in this sector is that it's still very dominated by the global north. So there's a lot of very interesting, and I would say very well-intentioned impact investors coming from Europe and North America, but there isn't enough strengthening of the ecosystems in the global south and the leaders that are doing this work or could do this work in the global south. And I think that is something you could really take a leadership role in. Just to, I won't stay on this slide too long, but just to say that asset owners and asset managers, that's a very important distinction when you look at the private sector in this space of impact investing. So asset managers in particular are crucial, obviously, in this work, and have all kinds of forms. They appear, as investment advisors, as fund managers, foundations that have their own internal investment offices, and a range of other pension funds and development finance institutions, which are public sector instruments, of course. And so the asset management side is an important place for you to look for the private sector. So the private sector is diverse. And in this sense, each of the large chunks or segments of the private sector, at least in our experience, have different motivations, have different regulatory contexts, have different expectations and requirements for financial return and for risk tolerance. So being specific about that, getting to know your partner, getting to understand its regulatory context, getting to really talk with them about what they need. When do they need to exit? Under what terms of their investment? And I'll come to this issue of exit, but it's a crucial piece. So that's what that slide is about. This is the most important slide of the morning for my presentation. I want you to look at what's up top. What do the private sector investors care about? They care about exit. This is a little counterintuitive to us. In the development world, we want to stay with our projects forever. Investors want to get out. Whether that's in 5 years or 10 years, they want to get out. Pension funds can stay in longer. Venture capital funds, 5, 7 years. And And that's really, really important to them. And so what the terms of the exit are important. And then from an impact point of view, this is another issue for you and for all of us, is when they exit, what happens? Do they sell their shares or their interest to an entity that will continue that mission of environmental or social impact? Or will they just cash out and move on? And we are looking for investors in this space who are responsible exiters. So exit is fundamental. Financial risk, financial return, brand management. Brand management is really crucial to the private sector. Sometimes they want exclusivity with you. They don't want to, you know, if they're a food company and they're with you on a project, they don't want another food company in there. So you say, well, let's do a consortium. Say, no thanks. You know, it's us or it's nobody. Or it's us or it's not us alone, or it's not us at all. And making decisions around what to say and how transparent to get. Often, you know, when you hear the reluctance in the voice of your private sector partner to talk about what went wrong, much of that is about brand management, protection of the brand. They're also very interested in new markets, and that has an upside because impact studies can tell them things about new markets. And then social and environmental impact. So that conversation and the hierarchy of decisions and priorities gets you to, you've got to work through all of those issues before you actually get to a real conversation about social and environmental impact. But the private sector is really important. It can create impact through all kinds of things, through its products, through its capital allocation, through its supply chains, through its employees, through the households that benefit from its services. And often there are insurance programs, there are social programs that involve communities that are being served, and those obviously have value too. So how to engage the private sector and impact investment? Why would they do this? It costs them money, it costs them time, there's a risk that things that go wrong will be reported on and they'll look bad. Well, through the studies that you can undertake, they can gain a better understanding of their customers, either their current customers or future customers. They can improve their own operational effectiveness because your projects they can become better, particularly at environmental issues or social issues as well. They can improve their investment and better targeting and better selection and sourcing in the localities that they're working in, the sectors they're working in, the supply chains they're involved in. Marketing and earning the trust of important stakeholders. That's another thing that impact studies can do. And maybe you'll go through some hard times with them and other stakeholders when something doesn't work, because in real life things don't work, or they go slower. Your projects take more time to achieve their results. Actually, that happens more than we talk about. So building some trust with them as you go on that journey, I think, is very important, and keeping the rhetoric low, keeping the discourse calm, so that the expectations are realistic. And aligning mission and mitigating risks. Your impact studies can help them do that from a corporate and strategic point of view if they can see the upside of getting involved in it. So those are a few arguments and value added, if you will, for the private sector with impact studies. I don't know, where's the private sector? It's like, where's Waldo and Cambridge? Where are they? Well, you can see them all along this results chain in an impact investment. Impact, the investor themselves may be a private sector player, a fund or product may be marketed by a private sector entity, The investees are often private sector investees, small businesses, micro businesses, growth-oriented businesses. But then there are other individual participants, the owners of the businesses, private sector actors. Employees who are employed by private businesses. And then the household. And this is very interesting and very important. Your impact studies can follow the money all the way across the chain and find out what the private sector has contributed to. Dean's work and others, and Joe and others on attribution at the end of that chain as to how the intervention made a difference is really important. This chart just says there are a lot of people along the way, a lot of actors, many of them being private sector. One of the really interesting things going on in impact investing, and I think in some of your projects, are these structured funds. So these are funds with a lot of different investors coming in at different levels and layers. And where is Waldo? Where's the private sector? Private sector is often the kind of large-scale, more risk-averse pension funds and insurance companies and banks, often up top with the senior investments, that is, investments that are privileged. If anything goes wrong, that they will be treated in the bankruptcy process favorably, and may actually have some favorable return conditions as well. So those kinds of players like to be up on the top side of this structure. Mission investors, some of the impact invested funds that we see, some of the venture capital funds with the social orientation can get into the middle side of this, and then donors and philanthropist foundations being on the low end of the structure. And then, of course, you follow it all the way through. There's an intermediary there's a fund manager, there's money that goes into intermediaries, or they go directly into target companies. And often there's a technical assistance facility, as many of the projects have as well. So again, this is a way to find the private sector and to locate what their interests are and where they fit. Okay. So I don't have any magic answers for you, but I have a few suggestions of directions. So there's a lot in performance monitoring that you can build with. Dean alluded to this yesterday. This is data that are collected are not necessarily for impact evaluation, but they're for implementation. They're short-term, and there's a lot, I would say, in the impact investing space that can tell you some interesting things about what they call impact management and measurement. It's mostly monitoring output stuff, but you can build on it. And companies are getting used to talking about that and working with the impact investors, at least, and impact investing advocates around that area. Let me go through these just briefly. So I'm going to talk briefly about incentives-driven intervention, which I think are really interesting, and I'll talk about one in a moment. Development impact bonds or social impact bonds, that's a space. It's a bit controversial in some cases, but actually really interesting, generative in terms of the use of quasi-experimental methods and counterfactuals, some RCTs. And then impact studies to inform the front end of investment decision making. This is where a lot of impact investors can use your help. And we'll talk about that in a moment briefly. And then impact collaboratives to address evidence gaps. So you could set up some observatories or some consortia to do impact studies that a large number of foundations and investors and private sector actors could participate in. This is a very cool project. This is called the Investing in Women Project in Southeast Asia, funded by the Australian Aid Program. And the model is that the program gives 10-year accountable grants to impact investing funds on the condition that they raise more money for women-owned SMEs and deploy that money in women-owned SMEs. And one of the conditions for doing this is that the impact investment funds must have a gender lens investing action plan for themselves. And that's not just for the project, but for their governance, for their human resource strategies, for their own operations. It's very thorough going, so it's accountable in that sense as well. You want money for this? Well, here's what you have to do. And these accountable grants are monitored very closely, they're quarterly reports. I'm not saying that this is an opportunity directly for impact studies, but there's something about the incentive process when it's explicit like this with private actors that you can learn from. So around the learning side, and maybe you can actually develop some designs of impact studies around its explicit incentives, exactly like this. But the whole area of gender is very important, and that's something else we can talk about later. Gender lens investing is a trending area within the impact investing space. There was a very big meeting in London late 2018 that brought together 300 people who are very interested in this area. So that's something that you may want to look at further. Development impact bonds. These are really, they're not bonds actually, they're performance contracts. And some of you are already involved in them, as I saw yesterday. Basically, private investors are asked to put money up front for intervention to achieve certain social objectives and social results. And there's a contract that says that usually an NGO that will deliver this set of activities in a social area, if they hit their targets for reducing disease in a particular district, they will, not only will the investors be repaid the principal, but they'll actually be repaid, they'll be paid a financial return on top of it. So this is interesting for private investors. The tricky part about designing these is that, first of all, they're very labor intensive. So if you do them too small, you're spending a lot of time on a very small exercise. The other thing is that if you give too sweet a deal to the private sector investors, that isn't exactly what is intended here. It's intended to actually share the risk. Much of the risk here in these deals are underrated by foundations or governments. So the risks to the private sector have to be calibrated in a way that are reasonable, and I would say not too sweet. But in any case, this is a real opportunity. There is, for example, a big div that has occurred in India and Rajasthan, rural Rajasthan, called Educate Girls. There's been some work done writing that up. And one of the parts of that story is that a serious exercise in accompanying this project with action research, helped it to improve itself in its design as it went along. The first 2 years, the results were lagging in that project, and they used ongoing research, again, in the way that we talked about this yesterday, to adjust the design of the project to add additional components. And by the end of year 3, they were able to hit their targets or get close to their targets. And that is a way that research really benefited. On the issue of front-end investment decision-making, this is a big area for you. How's our time? I haven't seen you. 1 minute left, okay. Very nice of you. Should have asked. So this is an impact investing fund based in the U.S., which is very knowledgeable about many of the SDG areas that you'd be interested in. This is one area, water. And you have, in this particular case, very specific outcomes that they're trying to achieve with their investments. And they invest both in the public equity markets, in private deals, and also fixed income. So they buy bonds and other fixed income products. This is a really interesting group because they want front-end information. They will monitor these metrics, but what they really want is high-quality studies and research and evidence before they go into a deal, because they want to know, much as Joe said about something you said this morning, that you actually need an evidence base about how these interventions look on a sectoral basis, in a specific outcome basis. Anyway, they're looking for front-end information. You should talk to them about what you can offer. So what could you do? You could develop a 5-year plan for taking a leadership role in this whole area of working with the private sector. You should have a diverse group of advisory committee. You can commission lead impact studies in high potential areas, priority evidence gaps. You can develop communities of practice along sectoral lines, projects that are making loans to SMEs, for example, in the agriculture sector. What do all those projects tell you, and what is the evidence base that you're building there? Resources and tools and thought leadership. And you can really tilt towards the global south. So that's what I wanted to say. I think you have a really tremendous opportunity in the next 5 to 10 years. And I wish you well, and I'm happy to discuss things now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Edward. It's now time for questions. We'll probably take the first one, maybe 3 at a time. So let's start with Gautier.
Thank you very much for the presentation. You introduced a very interesting concept, which is impact based or impact-based statement, which is a slide relation to the result-based statement which you are familiar with. And I just wanted to hear a little bit more your thoughts. Because yesterday we learned that measuring impact can be linked very much to manufacturing. And things can happen to manufacture or baseline which are out of control of anyone. Basically, third parties to invest in the manufacture, and that will change the result of how the impact set is measured. So just wanted to hear what the vision of your thoughts on private sector investments, how you feel about basically not paying private sector investors because of third parties works.
Thank you. Yes, I think you hit on a very important point about this branding and the reluctance of the private sector, and actually anyone, to be evaluated, because it's really hard to have results that don't look good. And so what do you do with that? And in the forestry sector, we've seen a major problem with commitments to eliminate tropical deforestation from supply chains. You know, the Consumer Goods Forum made a commitment to do this in 2010, and lots of companies came forward that produce palm oil, beef, soy, And the problem is that those companies that were willing to come forward were then attacked by Green Keys Friends of the Earth. And a lens was put on them that no one else would get. And what it's done is that medium-sized companies actually haven't engaged in this agenda, even though they're responsible for a lot of this commodity production. So how do we deal with this? I mean, we want good impact evaluation, but how do we keep the private sector engaged and not afraid? How can we support actually bad results of an evaluation?
Really easy question.
Thank you so much. Just in categorizing the private sector households, does that include farmers or households?
Okay. Thank you. So I think one of your questions was, or at least comments was, what about not paying the private sector its return?